Hey everybody, Lawrence here with Dirty Basic Brain coming at you with another one. Now, as y'all know, recently I was given a copy for making of Mighty Fortress, Citadel's little semi-castle fortress set from 1988. Thrilled to get that. While it wasn't a complete set, I was still incredibly happy to get this. It's missing the doors, the gate here, and some ladders. And I was like, I can make those. So, in this video, I want to run you through the process of how I made the replacement doors. It's a pretty simple and overall easy process, but I still want to run you through it. Now, before we actually get started though, I want to give a big shout out to my patrons, Dungeon Matron and Quarel. You guys' help is greatly appreciated. It really does help. Your support really does help the channel. All right, guys, let's get to it.
Of course, if I'm going to make a door, I need to know how big to make it, so just basically measuring it out. At first, I measured Imperial, and it wound up being 1 5/16 inches wide and 1 3/4 inches tall. But then, for some reason, I decided to measure it out in metric as well, and that wound up being 35 millimeters wide and 45 millimeters tall. So I eventually decided to go with metric just because it was just simpler for making the doors. And of course, I'm going to be using a chunk of graphics medium chipboard here for the door backings. That term will make sense in a little while. After I make a line here, I'm just going to go over couple times here with my alpha knife just to get a good, nice, clean cut. Because if you try and press through this one shot, you'll wind up getting jagged lines. And of course, I have my measurements sitting there because I didn't want to forget. That's why you write it down. And I'm going to measure out the height first, because this obviously is way too tall. And then I will measure out the width. Now that I got everything measured out, I want to cut one of the door backings out. Again, making multiple passes with the alpha knife, because the multiple passes will just get you a better, cleaner cut. And I got my first door backing. And I want to do a little test fit, make sure it fits in there. And of course it does. I'm not quite looking for a snug fit yet, because I'll be adding foam later. It's like, oh, well, that was easy to get out. Okay, yeah, that's close enough. And now I got to cut out the door faces themselves. I'm going to be making slices on this XPS. I want to get a good flat surface, so I'm going to make some extremely thin pieces here. And it's just way too thin, but save those pieces for later. And I'm not really doing any specified thickness here. It's just eyeballed, and that's perfect. And so I'll make several slices with that. And now that I have my big stack of slices, make sure they're all kind of flush, I'm going to take the door back I made and just adjust the guide here so it's at the proper width with a little bit of extra, and I can push that entire stack through. It's that easy. This other side looked a little thin, but I had to check. I checked quick and it was good. Of course, now I'm going to adjust the guide here, so for the height. And of course, make sure those are flush. Get my sled here, push it through. A couple times. And now I have a big stack of door fronts. This part's relatively easy. I'm just brushing on some wood glue to a piece of the chipboard, or the door back, taking a chunk of the foam, and then attaching it, pressing it down a little bit, and rinse and repeat. I mean, this is an easy process, this part. And like I said, I made the foam a little bit bigger, so I have some excess that's overhanging, and I'm going to trim it off. I mean, it's a pretty simple, if you do it like this, it's easy, quick. You just have, for this project, I have to do it 28 times. Because I'm making 28 doors for this fortress. And now let's add some texture. I'm using a stiff nylon bristle tile and grout brush. I prefer the texture you get from this style of brush. The wood grain is just larger and more there versus, like, say, a brass bristle brush, which is very fine line and creates more dust than this nylon does. And of course, I'm using my horribly expensive pencil sculpting tool. And I'm drawing in some plank lines. I prefer this method to door making than individual planks. If you want a door that isn't like dilapidated or really beat up. Now, if you're going for a beat up door, individual planks is the way to go because it's just easier. But for standard doors, this is my go-to method. Just drawing some plank lines with the pencil here. And you can do as many or as few planks as you want. It's pretty simple. Remember those thin pieces I told you to save from earlier? Well, here they are making an appearance again. I need to make banding for all the doors. And I like my banding to be thinner than the actual foam I use for the wood itself. So this is basically just trim a boatload of thin strips. Yeah, that blade's a little dull. Let's switch to this newer one. So I'm going to trim a boatload of thin strips to use for metal banding. It's a simple process. Just slice, move, whatever you're using to keep a straight line. Slice, move, slice, move, slice. Not hard. And in a blink, I'm almost done. Again, doing the metal banding is not a hard thing to do. Now, these thin slices, I'm just going to press up to the end of one side of the door and just kind of like tear it off at the other. And do it for 2 bandings for the door. Pretty simple. Now, I don't want a ripped off, torn off piece here, so I'm going to trim like a small little point to one end. As you can see there. Lay it up against. One thing you do want to make sure of, though, when you're doing this is that the banding will touch every last plank. It doesn't have to cover the entire length of the last plank, but it still needs to touch it. And now I need to make some backing plates for the door handles. I just grabbed a chunk of the extra foam that I use cut for the wood itself, but it's convenient and it's a leftover piece, so just cutting a couple thin strips And once you get the thin strips, just cut a couple little square. Well, I have 28 doors to make. I'm going to cut a bunch of small squares. And now that you have everything cut and ready to go, it's time to actually glue on. I'm using wood glue here. I normally use either wood glue or Alien's tacky glue for gluing foam on foam like this. And again, it's just a matter of brush it on and then press down to where, like I said, I eyeball stuff if it as far as the height goes. And the height looks good, so that's where I'll press it on. And the door plates, the little handle plates, I'll just kind of eyeball those as well. It's a simple process. Just brush, glue, place. Okay, now this is normally a step I don't do until after everything's painted, but I wanted to show it to you guys anyway. I'm making the door handles themselves. Don't ask me what these things are called. I got them from the jewelry making section at Michael's. There's like these poles with little hook loops. So I'm going to open that loop a little bit and get a little metal ring. I also got the jewelry making section. I think they're split rings. And put it into that little hook loop area. And then squeeze the hook loop shut. So now I essentially have a door handle. Almost. Just basically going to snip it so it's not such a long wire. And there you have your door handle. Now, to actually get the door handle in, I'm going to drill a small hole through the backing plate and through the foam and the chipboard. Now that I've got the hole drilled, I'm getting out my wood glue here. And the little bit of post that I left from cutting, I'm going to dip into the glue. Pretty simple there. And then just place it through the hole. Do a minor adjustment here. And you have a door. You have a built door. It's that simple. And it's good. It fits well. A lot of doors to be made. Obviously only 2 got handles, but the rest will get handles after they're painted, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. Now I've got all the doors made that for when I go to paint this.
Hey everybody, if you watch this far, it means you watch the end, and as always, I do appreciate that. If you like the video, hit the thumbs up. If you want to see more, click subscribe. If you have a comment to make, leave a comment down in the comment section. I'm really enjoying the process of getting this historical piece to glory. I mean, make something as simple as making doors. It needs it, but I'm really looking forward to putting this on a table someday. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I really do. But always remember, everyone, when you're making terrain, the only person you got to worry about is you, because it's your terrain.